All right, in this video, we put together a protection dashboard to show patch performance, prioritize patch list, etc., to let you have a nice visual of what devices have been patched over what timeline. If you've seen any of our previous videos, most of these widgets will make sense. They're pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but we will just quickly walk through. Make sure you go to get data first to start with. If you've already followed the steps for installation, you should have your OT-based custom data connector here. Click on that, click connect, and then you're going to enter your parameters here and click OK. You'll have some data selection tables, data table selection on the next screen, and then that'll bring in all your data over here. Okay, so what we've done up here basically is just two different filters. This is not a filter, it's just a counter, and this is simply a card. We use the card type visualization, and we dragged in device IDs from the devices table. I just want to see my total number of devices in my data set, and that will filter based on selections and interactions I make with all of these other charts. Next, we did a slicer for criticality, and that's device criticality. And that was just the new slicer. We drag that in, and then very simply, we drag criticality into our field. Now, one thing I want to point out is that when we just dragged criticality into the field, it had all of our criticalities, and I didn't want a pick list where we select one of each of the criticalities. I really just wanted to put that into two buckets, which is critical and non-critical. And that can be done simply by, let's say you have criticality here in your groups. You select the drop down and you'll select new group. In my case, I'll click edit group since we've already done new group, just to show you what it looks like. You'll have these values all over here. We selected them and clicked group. That brought them over into the right-hand pane, and I renamed that group critical. And then everything else that didn't have a label in our particular data set, that's our other group, I labeled that as non-critical. You might have a different scenario where it's not all of these, and then non-critical is just other. You might have 5 different criticalities, and you consider critical these 2, but not the other 3. So you can dice that up and create these groups however you want. But the basic point is you click the drop down and you click on group them, and then it'll give you this option to group your values on that slicer. So that's what we've done here, and we've narrowed it down to 2 groups: critical and everything else. That enables us to drill down all of these widgets to show only the critical devices or only the non-critical devices. Great. Simple enough. Down here we have a patch performance graph, which is simply the last patch date, which is a point in our data set. It's in OT base in the API. That's one of the fields in the JSON object that returns. And then we added into that the count of CVE ID and the legend device ID. I'm not showing the legend because it looked pretty unruly up here, but by doing this, it enabled me to display a nice graph that shows our devices that have a last patch date, and it puts them out here on this scatter graph. So this is a scatter graph. And then one thing I did up here was I added KEV equals yes. And to add a filter onto any of these widgets, you simply come over here and click the field you want to filter on. In my case, I did KEV. And then we just bring that into the data fields here, and it'll give you the option to filter it on basic or top in or advanced filtering. I just wanted to look at those with known exploits only. So that's what we see here. Over here, we did a patches installed over time. This allows you to get a visualization of those devices that were patched by month. So if we scroll through here, we can see, and you can see it kind of reflects what you're seeing over here pretty closely. See our just beyond 2020, we have the highest pointer graph, and that's what we see here as well. So we have our monthly breakdown of this, of all of the patched devices. And then we have down here a simple prioritized patch list, which is just a table. This one over here on the bottom left is also just a table. And we've covered building tables in the other videos, so I'm not going to spend any time there. But very simply, you just drag a table down here, or a report as it's called. Oh, it is called a table. For some reason, I thought it was a report. Anyway, it's called a table. You drop that down here, and then you just drag the fields from your data, from your tables over here into the column section, and there you have the table. And of course, we did some formatting on it, which we covered in the software dashboard before. Okay, great. And then we did the same thing with the prioritized patch list. The only difference is it's just a different set of columns. We have our devices selected from the performance graph, and then we have our columns here for the prioritized patch list. And both of these are set up with the relationships that Power BI automatically will model for you when you bring the data in. Whenever I make selections over here, it will go ahead and reflect down here in all of our tables. So you can see once I select it over here, I have the display of the device that I had clicked on, and then I have the prioritized patch list over here. That's all of the potential patches on that particular device, right? So that looks good. That looks good. You know, we should probably put a KEV filter in here, actually, I would think. There we go. Shorten that list up a little bit. Okay. Yes, that looks better. So now we're going to see, when we click on this, we'll see the device here, and then the prioritized patch list based on KEV equals yes. Lastly, what we did here was, okay, let's click out of this filter real quick. Last thing we did here was we built a patch recency visualization using a simple line chart. And that's what that looks like if you pull it up as a report. But the line chart, it's an area chart actually, but it shows us your patched devices within the last year, within the last 2 years, and 3 years beyond. Obviously, all of our devices have been patched within, at some point in the past. But if you look, the closer you get, you can see that less devices have been patched more recently, which is where your vulnerability comes in. I've only had 6.3% of my total device count patched within the last year. Then 44% has been patched within the last 2 years, and 100% is patched at 3 years or greater. But that means that the majority of our devices haven't been patched in quite a long time, leaving them open to vulnerabilities and exploits. And to build this widget, it was a little more complex than most of these other widgets, which were pretty much drag and drop. But because this is a cumulative percentage of the device patch over time, it involved writing some DAX code, which I'm not going to go into great length explaining, but I will bring it up and you can take a look at that. And if you want to try to build something similar, we're happy to help, or you can just take a screenshot of this and hopefully it'll help guide you. There are 2 points to building this widget. One is the x-axis, which we created a calculation called patch timeframe, and then on the y-axis we put cumulative patched. So if we look at the patch timeframe, that involves writing some variables to basically create the date buckets that we're going to use to lump our device data into, our patch data into. So we have that on the x-axis, and then on the y-axis we created one called cumulative patched percentage. And in here we do all the calculations to look at what's our total number of devices, what is the count of devices patched within the last year, patched within the last 2 years and 3 years, and then we return that with an if statement selecting based on the time frame that we select on the chart. It'll return the cumulative value there. So that enables us to display these rolling cumulative patched percentages, which should always be greater in the past. And then as you move to more recent times, you're going to have less percentage of your device base having been patched. So pretty useful dashboard for just getting a high-level overview of your patch performance and where your weak areas are. and enable you to drill down and see a little bit more about the device data, the patch data, and take action and reduce and mitigate the risk of those vulnerabilities. All right. If you have any questions about importing the data, installing the Power BI custom data connector, or building any of these dashboards, please reach out to us. We're happy to help. Thanks.